cling to people like that, we do it because we need them a lot. And the more you use people to protect you, then the more you're going to need them to, because you're not going to be able to do it on your own. If any of you guys have house cats, an indoor kitty, you raise them up, you give them kitten food. As they grow older, you give them house food. Once in a while, you might see them chase like a fly or something. How often they catch the fly? Not nearly as much as if they're outdoor cats, because they're indoors. Everything is given to them. All their food, all their water, all their resting places. They're completely safe. They never have to sharpen themselves. Some people, a lot of people, are indoor cats. Nietzsche would say, be wild, and be capable of being a true friend. For him, philosophy should be practical. It should do something. And so it isn't just a matter of sitting around thinking about what would I do in this situation. It's about identifying ways to actually apply your philosophy to your real life. And he's a really interesting guy. To do an introduction on him would actually take a couple of days just to tell you about him. I will say something like, remember World War II? You read about that? That kind of was him. He died in 1900, but it kind of came from him. And yet, he gets credit for it anyway, which he shouldn't have. But he's one of those guys in history who's so incredibly smart that it's scary. As you can see, he dies in 1900, but he predicts the whole 20th century. So he says, here's where things are in the late 19th century. Here's where things are going to go in the 20th century. And he wasn't wrong about any of it. He predicted the rise of Nazism. He predicted the rise of communism. And when you look at even just those two systems, not including the war casualties, just those two systems, racked up the death of about 100 million civilians between them in the 20th century alone. It's like when you talk about, people say communism, that's a good idea. Yeah, it's a good idea in theory. Not really. And then people say, it hasn't been tried before. Yeah, it's been tried lots and lots of times. In the 20th century, over 100 million dead just from that one system itself. And it all comes from this kind of impulse that Nietzsche describes before he dies. He says, this is where it's going to go. He can see it. And he's not saying it in this way of I'm glad. No, he says it in a way that's very, it's lamentful. He's disappointed that it's going to go in that direction. You've heard the saying before, what doesn't kill me makes me stronger. That comes from him. He's the one who said that. I don't know if you've also heard the phrase before, when someone proclaims God is dead. That also comes from him. He did that as well. And he was a savage critic of religion generally and of Christianity specifically. But he says it in a way that he's not celebrating the death of religion. He's saying it because religion is going to die, so are our value systems, our morals, our ethics. There won't be anything that says that there's right and wrong anymore. And that's why he's able to predict the mass casualties of the 20th century, because our value systems are derived largely from religion. He says once religions are gone, our value systems, our ethics are out the window. Why shouldn't you murder somebody? Why shouldn't one country take over another one? If it's true that there's no such thing as God in heaven and hell, then that means that there's no such thing as right and wrong either. The only thing that exists is power. And the powerful should always rule over the weaker. And you can think of it as humans in a state of nature. Lions don't take down a gazelle and then wander away and be like, oh my God, I killed a gazelle. I can't believe I did this again. No, the lion does what the lion does. And he argues that religions and ethics and morals, these are things that stop us from becoming as strong as we possibly can. These are the things that prop up the weak. And the weak are the ones who then, of course, kind of permeate through society. And the strong spend most of their time trying to take care of the weak, because the weak have convinced the strong that there's such a thing as heaven and hell, as right and wrong, as good and evil. But if you get rid of these ideas of right and wrong and good and evil, because you realize that those are just social judgments. Those are the judgments of people who are weaker than you, who are trying to stop you from becoming as strong as you possibly could. And that as soon as you get that through your head, that it really is about the survival of the fittest, the survival of the strongest, you now have a responsibility, which is to maximize yourself and become as strong as you possibly can, to be as smart as you can. Now, this kind of an idea, I'm sure you hear this all the time especially from teachers. We say this, we get more done together. Oh yeah, we get more done together. No, bullshit. There's no statue that commemorates a committee. You're going to notice that all of the great people of history were great individuals. There's almost never a great group of people or a great committee of people. It's always one person on a statue by themselves, a painting of one person by themselves, because it's the one person, the one personality that drives everybody else forward. And what is that one person always fighting against? The herd, the group, a whole bunch of people who are trying to stop that one person. And if you understand that, you understand something really powerful, which is that all of those people who have monuments and statues to them, they overcame the herd and the mass of people. Why? Because herds and groups of people and masses of people are made up by weak people who group up together because they have to. They can't stand by themselves. They have to be part of a group. What happens if they stand by themselves? Well, they would get killed because they're weak. And they know that, so they will then band together. The strong person doesn't do that. In fact, the strong person is going to repel the weak people. The strong person, the weak people will look at them and say, oh my gosh, they're crazy. Oh my God, they have these weird ideas and they start to feel dangerous. And there's a good reason for that. Because the strong person is dangerous. What stops the strong person from doing whatever they want to do? No, because the world can't stop them. That's why the world bands together, and the world never does. That's why history is pushed forward by people, individuals, not by groups, not by committees. And the more that you marry yourself to a group, the more that you say, I'm part of this group or I'm part of that group, the more you dilute your own character. Because you have to sacrifice parts of yourself to belong to a group. You know, if you're going to join the Republican Party, but you're okay with abortion, you can't be. You have to give up that belief of yours, because that's not what the party says. And if you want to belong to the party, you got to do what the party says. If you're against abortion, you can't really join the Democratic Party because they're in favor of it. But what if I'm against it? Sorry, you don't belong to that group. And so you have to compromise a part of yourself to belong to that group. Any group that you join, you're going to have to compromise yourself to belong to. And as soon as you start compromising yourself in one area, you compromise yourself in lots of areas, and the whole character of what you are degenerates. And what do you end up seeking? Comfort, entertainment, basics. You're no longer able to stand up and become strong because you join these groups because it protects you from struggle. But the only way that you become better and stronger is through struggle. And so you have to go out and you have to face it. And this is why you have to be very careful about who your friends are. Because if you're friends with people who've never really struggled, never really overcome anything, and have never proven themselves to you, then you cannot depend on them to be standing by you when you need a friend. Because these are not people who are capable of being enemies. That's why I was asking earlier, being able to. Well, do they have, first off, would they choose to? In other words, are they willing? And being willing and able are two very different things. You might have people who are very willing to stand by you, but they also might be a liability. You're about to get jumped by 4 people, and you have a friend who comes with you and says, I'm going to stand by you, and they've never been in a fight before. That person is not helpful. That person's a liability. Because now you got to fight these people, and you have to protect your friend. That person is not helpful. They might be willing to wage war for you, but they're not capable. And then that means that they therefore really can't be a helpful friend. But that same thing is true about you. And it isn't just about being able to fight physically, although there is part of that, but also being able to fight mentally, being able to fight psychologically, being able to stand up for things, being able to have the resources to stand up against things. So in order to be a friend, you got to be willing to wage war for them. That's true. That's the first part. But then you also have to be capable of being an enemy. In other words, being an enemy to the people who are against your friend. But then again, you also have to be willing to be an enemy to your friend. Because if you just go along with them just because they're your friends, well, then you're doing the exact same thing that we mentioned earlier. You're compromising parts of yourself to belong to a group, to belong to a herd. And that means that you're therefore never going to be able to struggle and achieve and become what you could become. So find those parts of yourself that need strengthening and strengthen them. And then if you can find other people who also are on that same kind of journey, becoming strong for themselves, and you can join yourself to them, but also be able to separate from them when you guys are no longer aligned, then you've got yourself a group. But then you might say, but then what if they leave you when you need them? Well, you won't need people as often. You won't need people as often. In other words, when we cling to people like that, we do it because we need them a lot. And the more you use people to protect you, then the more you're going to need them to, because you're not going to be able to do it on your own. The more you hunt for, like, if any of you guys have house cats, an indoor kitty, little kitten, you raise them up, you give them kitten food. As they grow older, you give them house food. Once in a while, you might see them chase like a fly or something. How often they catch the fly? Not nearly as much as if they're outdoor cats, because they're indoors. Everything is given to them. All their food, all their water, all their resting places. They're completely safe. They never had to sharpen themselves. Some people, a lot of people, are indoor cats, if you follow. So Nietzsche would say, be wild, and be capable of being a true friend. Questions? Comments, concerns, complaints, criticisms, critiques? Happy Friday.